What is up, everyone? This is Derek back again with another Mediocre Streams review, which might finally have a name. We're thinking better late than never reviews, but we'll see. Today I'll be reviewing Metro Exodus. Came out earlier this year, I think back in February. It is the sequel to Metro Last Light, itself a sequel to Metro 2033. All based on a book series of the same name, Metro, starting with 2033, and they kind of went off on their own path. I haven't read any of them. For those of you who have not seen our previous review, I based my review on 4 points. We got graphics, story, functionality, and gameplay. What are all these? Graphics speak for themselves, story speaks for itself. Functionality is how well the game works. Are there bugs? Are the controls tight? And do they work? Is it glitchy? Does it work? Does it work? That is it. And gameplay, of course. We all know what gameplay is. The most important aspect of any game. I'm going to be starting out with the story. Story of Metro Exodus. Well, all Metro games have different endings. Depending on your choices. This one follows the good ending. The good endings tend to be the canonical ones. So this is the good ending of Last Light. I would recommend playing the previous 2 games because they are really good. They're really good games. They're really good single player games. And of course, you'll know more going into Exodus if you are familiar with those 2. But we're set in post-nuclear war Russia, specifically Moscow at the beginning. Everything is shitty. It's cold, cities are in ruins, things are dead, people live in the underground metro systems, which have been divided into various sections where different groups control them. You have like a communist faction that controls an area they call the Red Line. You have the Nazis called the Fourth Reich. They control a different area. You have I believe the central area of the metro is called Polis, and you have all these other little cities that we'll get into the world building, which is my favorite aspect of these games. But basically life more or less continues for humanity in the metros, for better or for worse. But our story involves the main character of the books, from what I know, and the previous 2 games, which I do know because I played them, Artyom. And he is a silent protagonist except for in the cutscene, or not the cutscenes, the loading screens where he talks about what's going on. I don't know why. It's kind of a mini gripe I have is why he's a silent protagonist when he talks in the loading screens. Like, why not just have him speak in the campaign? Him being silent doesn't really add anything to it. It's not like anyone comments on it. They just treat it as if he does speak up every now and again, but that's side note. After the event of the last game, things are kind of tense in the metro. I want to explain. I would recommend playing 2033 and Last Light because they get you into the story of this, and they're just really good games. But he wants to leave the metro, even though everyone else is telling him, "Don't bother. There's nothing beyond Moscow. Everything's dead. We're all that's left. This is a pipe dream that you have." But as we find out, there are indeed survivors, and this spurs on Artyom, his wife Anna, from the previous, who was introduced in the previous game, and eventually the group of soldiers called the Spartans, the Order of the Spartans, whatever, led by Anna's father, to get out of Moscow. They're leaving the metro. They're having an exodus, hence the title. To go find better land, a place that's not irradiated and filled with mutants and hostile humans. I touched on world building a second ago, and this has been my favorite aspect of the Metro games. In the Metro games, you really get a good idea of, here is the world, here's how people live, here's what things are like. Here's the factions, more so in the previous games because now you're leaving Moscow, so they're not really much of a factor. But even then, like, finding out how the rest of the world works as you travel from Moscow throughout Russia to find this new land. I mean, it's incredible in terms of making you feel like you're in this world and you're a part of it. And a lot of that also goes to the characters. Very well done characters. You get your wife Anna, who's great. I should add, the voice actors all do a superb job, and I don't know any of them. I know that you can hear Steve Blum in there. He's one of your main dudes, one of your buddies. But like, all these guys do a great job, and they really add the lines they're given, the dialogue that's written for them. It's a very well written game. It really gives the game a sense of character on top of the world building. You really get invested in this story in a way that a lot of single player games don't really do nowadays, since single player games are kind of a rarity nowadays. We don't get them as much as we used to, but this game really takes you on an adventure. You get a bunch of neat characters that you can hang out with, that you really get endeared to, and that just goes to the writing. They once again, because the last two games were very well written, they knock it out of the park, I feel, with the writing. Really bring you into this world, really making you like these characters. The game, of course, is linear. The linear single player game. You just follow one quest after another. There are multiple endings depending on your actions. There are more morality actions, from what I gathered, because they were in the previous games, and I would assume that carried over. I'm gonna say I'm pretty sure I got the bad ending, but the game does let you break from those linear moments more in the beginning of the game, or like the second act, I would say. Like, there are open map areas that I'll get to where you're still following a single quest, but you're able to move around more freely rather than following a linear path through Moscow or whatever other areas you get to. Story is great. I'm gonna give a lot of credit to the composer behind the score. I have his name written down because I wouldn't remember it otherwise. I'm gonna give it my best shot. Oleskii Omelchuk, I believe is his name. I'm pronouncing that as best as I can. Great job. Very great job. So many moments in the game where the music starts playing and it really gives you a sense of dread, hope, sadness. So well composed that I had to write that down, put that in the review, that yeah, this game has a great score. Well, we're gonna move on to gameplay, because I could gush about the story all day. I could talk about how great it is all day. Even though this is a linear single-player story-focused game, it's still a game. Gameplay is incredibly important. Let's see what the gameplay is like. Now, it leans a lot on survival. It's a survival horror-ish game. I mean, there's bits of horror. I'm not gonna know if I'm gonna go hard on the horror aspect, but there are a lot of scares and stuff. But it's very much a survival game. It's very much, you've got your guns, you've got your equipment, you've got your resources that you've got to use intelligently. Because there's crafting for the various stuff that you use in the game. There's only 2 resources in the game though. You have your scrap, like metal, and like chemical stuff. But you're going to need to hang on to those, because they're used to make everything from ammunition, grenades, maintaining your weapons, because they will degrade, and that will cause them to jam and stuff. So you're going to want to keep them clean. Repairing your helmet, which can get cracked, medicine, radiation filters, all kinds of stuff. You're going to need to monitor all this. And if you think, oh, I'll just gather up as much as I can and be very careful, I tried that. Maybe you can do better, but I found myself constantly needing to like get more. I gotta have more med packs because you can only have 5 at a time, I believe, and you can get fucked up pretty quick. You're gonna be going through those med packs pretty quick, and you're gonna. Luckily, the game lets you craft on the go. You can pull out your backpack and craft basic things. For more complex things, you need workbenches, but on the go, you can make your radiation filters, because if you're in a radioactive area, put your mask on, you get the filter that you gotta take out and replace, and you gotta build more of those, of course. But on the go, you build basic stuff, and I was always having to stop and go like, oh crap, I gotta build more med packs, I gotta make sure I have enough filters. You can make basic ammo for I can't remember what it's called. It's like a air pressured gun. You like pump it up like a BB gun or whatever, and you can make the little pellets for that. You can also make arrows for the crossbow you get later on, like in the basic, your crafting pack. And I always had to make sure to keep track of all that, because you never know if shit's gonna go south. It is pretty difficult in that regard, though. I died plenty of times. I think I did the medium difficulty, and I have to go back and check. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure, because I don't know why they wouldn't keep this. But in the previous games, especially Last Light, I remember this. They had 2 different modes. For one that was more casual, one that was more survival based, and then you chose easy, medium, hard from there. I can't remember if that carries over, but I'm pretty sure it did. But I did like a medium difficulty, and I got killed plenty of times. I ran through my resources plenty of times. It really keeps you on edge. It's really well designed in how it makes you just like, oh, I gotta make sure I have enough ammo going into this. I might have to, stealth it, which you can do. In all of the open areas, there's actually a day and night cycle where you can sleep and wait till day or night. Obviously, night gives you more of a stealth advantage, which you will definitely want to do. Stealth is a mainstay in these games. When it's dark, you can sneak around. Obviously, crouching hides a lot of your movement sounds. You can put silencers and stuff on your weapons. You can turn off lights. Blow out candles, anything that can illuminate their surroundings and possibly give you away. And in this, you also get night vision goggles, which are really useful, but they require a charge. Much like the last games, you have a little handheld charger that you use to, crank energy into like your electronics, your flashlight, night vision goggles, all that. Again, adding to the survival aspect, you really gotta make sure like I'm all charged up, I'm ready to go. Night vision goggles eat through that energy quicker than your flashlight, so yeah, keep that in mind. But the stealth it's not hard stealth from what I could tell. It's not like you find anything that hides your the noise you make. But it's very basic stealth of just like, stay hidden, stay low, stay to the shadows, use quiet weapons. You can melee people, and you can kill or knock people out, which affects the way the story goes at some points. You can be viewed as a murderer if you just knife the shit out of everyone you come across, but you can also be viewed as more merciful if you knock them out, which adds to another aspect that I thought was really cool, is that enemies can surrender. So if you're in a gunfight and you start winning, enemies may very well say, I give up, please, I surrender, I'm putting my gun down, and you can choose either kill them or knock them out, of course affecting the way the morality goes. I mentioned that there are open world segments in the game, and this is more second act stuff. Early on it's very linear. After the second act, it goes back to being very linear. But in that, sort of middle part, there's these areas where you're free to travel around. You don't have to follow a closed area. You just travel this wasteland area, gather resources, do the assigned quests at your leisure. There are notes and recordings and stuff that you can collect, and there are little things like, you know, a kid saying, "Hey, can you find my teddy bear?" And you can find it if you want. My gripe with this is that no real need for the open world. It feels more like it's there because of the environment, more because, well, we're in an open area. We don't really have a way to keep the player stuck to this linear path, so might as well just make it open. It's not like where you have this big open area with a bunch of quests that you do in whatever order you want at your leisure, and then you finish the main quest. This is very much, it's open, but you know, you're still just doing one quest. It's the best way to describe it is that it's open for the sake of being open, and it feels like it's open just because, you know, the devs probably thought we can't find a way to keep people on a linear path. You know, we're in a desert area, which is different than, you know, bombed out Moscow where there's debris everywhere that gives you a good excuse to keep you on a linear path. We're in this big desert area. We can't really figure out a way short of annoying invisible walls to keep the player on a path, so let's just not give them a path. Let's just let them walk around this open area and do whatever at their leisure, and not confine them to like any time. You can do the main quest at these parts as long, you know, whenever you want, take as long as you want. There's no time restrictions on it, but it feels like an empty-ish. It feels pretty empty. It's you know, there's not really any side quests other than maybe pick up something that one of your buddies can use, but there's not like, hey, while you're out there, check this place out and check this place out and gather these things. It's really just you're exploring for the sake of exploring, because there's stuff out there that you can collect. Again, the collectible apes and whatnot, the resources that you can gather. There could be enemies that have guns that have parts on them that you can salvage and use at the workbench. I'm going to get to the workbench in a second. And also, I guess, just exploring the wasteland, because it's very, well, it looks very great. We'll get to the graphics, but it's they're very well made wastelands, but they don't need to be open. They don't really utilize that to any extent. We're gonna get to the weapons. So there are plenty of weapons in the games. You got a lot of the returning ones. I think most of the returning ones from the previous games. You like the bastard, submachine gun. You got like the AK-47, of course. You've got a shotgun. Well, depending on how you customize it, it's a single barrel, double barrel, quad barrel. I think even shotgun. You know, a bunch of guns that you can play with, but you can only have 3 at a time. One of which being like your crossbow or your air pump BB gun. The other 2 being whatever you want. You could carry both shotguns, a sniper rifle, the AK, all kinds of stuff. And at these workbenches is where you go to like spec them out. You know, change scopes. You got, you know, red dot sights and night vision sights. Different stocks, different barrels, magazine capacity, all kinds of stuff, and also to, you know, clean your guns. Again, they will jam if you don't take care of them. But you can also mess with your armor. You know, you can choose like here's armor that carries more explosives. Here's one that carries more ammunition. Here's a mask that has it's more damage resistant. A bunch of other stuff that you can mess with if it fits your playstyle. So there's a lot of stuff to do with your weapons and your gear in there. More than the previous game, I would say, but it has been a while since I played Last Light. Plenty of enemies too. You got a lot of returning enemies like the Watchmen, little rat guys. You got like the bugs that hate light. They get killed by light. But you got, I swear these guys are new. They're like these ghouls, like from Fallout, where they're just like really irradiated humans that will just attack you and swarm you, and they're pretty freaky. And I'm not gonna spoil what else appears in there, but like you got all kinds of crazy creatures in there that really can fuck you up, scare wise and damage wise, because they can. A lot of them can take plenty of damage. But unfortunately, as good as a lot of this gameplay is, and as much work went into the story as did, there are bugs, unfortunately. A lot of them are little gameplay, like ragdoll glitches, like they're shaking in the ground and whatnot. Some will be like, I once got stuck in like the train, on top of the train. I don't know how I got on top. Unfortunately, I got out as soon as the cutscene was over. But there was another bug where I got knocked down to the boat. Usually when you're in water, you automatically swim to the shore, but I just didn't, so I had to reload my last save point. But those could all be forgiven if it wasn't for the loading. This game has very long loading times, especially when you're starting a game, when you return to the game. I don't know why the loading takes it like 5 minutes, I think, is how long I clocked it in at one time. It took 5 minutes once I continued from where I left off for the loading screen to let me continue. Upon death, loading is pretty quick, but it takes so long. I don't understand why. Even in the areas where it's not an open area, there's nothing game breaking that I found. Just a lot of annoyances, a lot of really irritating things, a lot of things that break immersion. Because in a game that has a story as good as this, and is written as well as this, and well designed when we get to the graphics as this, when you see a body flipping out and stuff, it kind of takes you out. But gameplay overall, shooting, satisfying, the controls. I was using a controller, not as accurate as the mouse and keyboard, obviously, but I found trouble aiming at times. Like I would try to lock on to someone. There is an you look down your sight, it locks onto the nearest target. But when I was like sniping, it was really hard to, really hard to like, get right there, right on him. It would kind of go to the side a lot more than normal, and that annoyed me. But overall, combat's really good. Everything about this game is really good in terms of the gameplay. I should note that there is no HUD, unless you press like the bumpers to see your stuff. If you just look at the game, there is no HUD. You have to rely on looking at your watch where your stuff is. You have to like really there's just it adds to the immersion aspect, the fact that there's no health bar or anything around you. Yeah. No HUD. No HUD unless you bring it up through pushing buttons to build. Like if you hold down LB, you'll get the options to like pull out your backpack and stuff, but other than that, there's no HUD. I'm being repetitive. No HUD. This is the following day. As you can see, I'm wearing a different shirt. But we're going to talk about the graphics of Metro Exodus. We're going to start with the environments, which are spectacular. This is a really good looking game when it comes to all the environments you go to, whether it's the desert area, the snowy areas of Moscow or other parts of Russia. You get forested areas. You get all these really beautiful locations that look great, and it really adds to the immersiveness of this world that everything looks so well rendered, so well detailed. Especially since, like I said before, there's no HUD, so you're just looking around at everything. It feels real. Models, however, for a lot of the characters and creatures look good generally. All the mutants and stuff you encounter are pretty well designed. They got a lot of detail on them. Characters likewise, but there is some, like, their animation, like it looks weird kinda, but it's not so much that it breaks away from how great everything else looks. Like, this is a very good looking game, definitely stepping it up from where the previous games were, especially since they're dealing with newer environments that aren't just snow and dark metros. Some details I want to go over. You look at the weapons you get, lots of detail in those. You know, all the little parts that you can see within them, they look very much like this is stuff that was put together by people who have very little to work with. They look very jerry-rigged and slapped together, and it's really cool. This is outside of the graphics. These are details I just wanted to skim over a bit. But one neat thing I saw is that if you use the crossbow, you can pin people against the wall. I thought that was funny. And when you retrieve the arrow, they just slump over. Great musical cues. That goes back to the score. You know, when things get tense, the music really adds to that. When you know, there's like a monster nearby or something, you get that little musical sting to let you know, like, shit, something nearby. And to go back to the creature design, they got some weird looking mutants, man. Like, some really, like, aside from like the humanoid guys that look like your basic ghoulish, you know, radiated people, you got like the big mutant bear that's like, holy hell, that thing is ugly. And the amount of detail they put into making it look ugly as sin, it makes it scary. It makes it a fucking nightmare to fight, as well as a lot of the returning creatures you face and some newer ones that are just unpleasant to deal with because they're so gross looking. And that goes a lot to the graphics of the game. The devs really put a lot of work into making these look like mutants. They look horrendously, like, mutated and gross, and it makes you scared. It makes you very, very scared. But we've gone over everything. It's time to get to our final scores, starting with graphics. I talked about how good the graphics are. Things look a little weird with the people. They almost kind of action figure-y, if that makes any sense. But environments, creatures, those all look good. I'm gonna give the graphics a 4 out of 5. They could have been better in some areas, but overall, it's very nice. This is a very nice looking game. Story, I'm gonna give a solid 5. Solid 5 out of 5. Like, these are, the devs, the writers, they put so much work into the stories for these games. You really get endeared to the characters. You really get endeared to the quest of Artyom, everything he's going through. You really like what you really just, you want to play. You want to get through this. You want to see where the adventure takes you, and you know, you care about all these people and what's going on. It's a solid 5, and I'm excited to see if they continue with another game. Functionality, though, I gotta give it a 3 out of 5. Like, Queen, if it was just, you know, the occasional bugs of like bodies freaking out and, you know, like getting stuck in some places, that'd be one thing. But, you know, I would give it a 4 at that point. But the long loading times, it puts it down to a 3. There's no reason that I can think of that, you know, these loading times should take as long as they do. And it's because of that I'm going to give the functionality a 3 out of 4 or 5 on my own score. But gameplay, I'm just going to give it a solid 5. Aside from some of the controller issues in terms of aiming and stuff, this is a fun game. You know, all the customization you can do, the intensity of everything, and how you have to use your resources. It's difficult, but not too difficult depending on what you play it on. How immersive everything is. Yeah, I'm just giving that a solid 5 out of 5 for gameplay. This adds to a total score of 17 out of 20. Go check it out. Like, if you are looking for a good single player experience, play the first 2 Metros first of all. Then play this. But if you don't feel like doing that for some reason, yeah, I mean, you can get the remasters of 2033 and Last Light in a bundle on like Steam and Xbox, I think, and whatnot. So you should definitely do that. But if you're not, and you're just gonna say, "I'll play Exodus," go ahead. This is a really good game. This is a really good single player experience. You're gonna have a lot of fun out of it if you like single player driven, good stories, survival elements. Yeah, that kind of game. You're gonna like this. I certainly did. So final score 17 out of 20. Definitely a must try. And that concludes my review of Metro Exodus. Fantastic game. We'll see where we go next with our next review, whatever that could be, on what we're now calling possibly Better Late Than Never reviews. Better late than never. Because, you know, better put them out eventually than not at all. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for watching. Drop a like, drop a subscribe. Check out our other platforms. Check us out on Twitch, Twitter, whatnot. You'll see when we roll the credits. And have a generally nice night or day. You know, wherever you're watching this at. Have a good time.